Hello. Today we're going to be taking a look at Sitecore's new XM Cloud Component Builder. A component builder is a front-end as service, no-code tool for building and managing the UX and the UI of websites built within XM Cloud. So we're going to be putting the tool through its paces, testing out what it can and can't do, and how it lives up to our expectations. So let's jump in and take a look. Okay, so before we get to building the site itself, let's start in Figma, where our UX designer has designed the new site that we need to build. So here are the wireframes. And as you can see, this is a website for a brand, a fictional brand we've created called Cova Insurance. And the wireframes are made up of various components, such as the hero header here, a primary action bar with 3 cards, promo block, and various other variations on the promo block, accordion, news carousel, and so forth. So a fairly typical kind of site wireframe. And then when we go over to our themes, we can see the final UI that's been applied to this wireframe. Up above here is our color scheme, and using dev mode within Figma, we can get the attributes that we need for each of those styles. And for example, with the hero header, we can see our different margins and paddings and other aspects of our styles. We can see our typography styles here as well, button styles, etc. So, over here we have our different color combinations, logos, and again, typography styles. So from within Figma, we have all the information we need to start building out our design system and component library within XM Cloud. So let's jump over into XM Cloud now. So we have our site that I'll open up in Pages. And I've created a page down here called Subcon, which is empty at the moment, and this is where we'll build out the page using our components. And then back over in XM Cloud under Tools and Components, we'll go to our Component Builder. Now, before we start building the components themselves, we need to add in all the elements that go into our components, all the atoms and molecules, if you like. So within the style section, there's various bits and pieces we need to pull together. So we start with fonts, or we start with the basics category, and these are all the core building blocks. Fonts is first, and you can see I've already added one font family, which is Inter, which matches our designs in Figma. That's the font family that's being used. Okay, and you can add additional font families if you want. At the moment, we are limited to Google font families, which is a bit of a limitation, but they're all there. Adding to fonts, we've got our color palette. This is the ASIC brand palette. You can add a new collection. I've got a collection down here for our Cova Insurance brand. And as you can see, these match the colors that we've got available here in Figma. Graphics is a new feature. It's as yet a little bit undefined, so watch this space. Breakpoints, this is a default set of breakpoints corresponding to kind of common device sizes. You can, of course, add your own. They can also just work with the defaults, and that's a good place to start. Once we've got our basics in place, we add to those with some rules. And so, for example, with typography, we add to our font family various font attributes and styles, such as size, line height, and etc. And we build out our typography. So you can see I've got some Cova typographies that I've built out here. Again, just a combination of our font and font rules. Decorations are basically our boxes. Here's a Cova one that I've created. It's got a slight corner radius, no drop shadow, and a green border. Fills are our background colors. Again, I've got a collection here for our Cova fills, all our different background colors. Spacings is a default set. And again, you can add your own custom spacings if you want, matching exactly the Figma designs if you wish. So hopefully you can see this is quite a powerful system of building up the different attributes of our styles to create something that should be pixel perfect against our designs in Figma. Next, we have elements, and this is where our basics and our rules come together. So we've got text elements, which of course are our paragraph styles, which I've got quite a few listed here, our heading styles. And for each of these, it's just a combination of the basics and the rules. So we select our typography that we want to make available with this particular paragraph style, and we select our color. It's as simple as that. And we do that with each of our text elements. Inline elements are things like badges, buttons, and links. And you can see here I've created some buttons already, a primary button style and a secondary button style. And these correspond exactly with the button styles we've got here in our designs. If we go into a button, again, it's just a combination of the elements that we've already created: typography, spacing, decoration, fill, and text color. And we just select those different attributes for each of our elements. And block elements are our sections and cards. And again, you just create these using a combination of all the other things you've already defined. We're almost there. The final step of styles is themes. And a theme is where you can bring together a defined set of elements. So you can see here we've got block elements, inline elements, and text elements. And these are the elements and the default elements that will be applied whenever you apply this particular theme. And again, I'll show you when we're building our component, but essentially you can apply a theme to a component and it will automatically then apply all the default styles or elements that you've created for that theme. So this is a powerful tool. It really speeds up the process of developing and designing components. And it also means that if you want to make a global change across your entire site that you've built with these components, you can do it all here in the one spot in the theme, and it will then apply across your entire site. So it's the power of what we could typically do with CSS, but this is, of course, a no-code way of doing it. That's themes. That's themes and styles. The other thing we need to do and set up before we build our components is data sources. So it's all well and good to build a component that has content within it that is reusable across your XM Cloud site, and that's certainly what we can do. But we can add some extra power to those components by adding an external data source, which means that the content is coming in from a source outside of XM Cloud, and you can manage that independently of the component UI and UX. So there's a bunch of data sources here that I've already created. To add a new one, it's really simple. Just go in and add a data source, and there's one that I've got here already, which is a JSON file from a healthcare website. So if we just call this US healthcare data, and you can paste in the JSON or you can fetch it from the URL, which is what we'll do. And you can see it's showing us the structure of the file here, and we can save that. And now that data source is available to use within the components that we build. Okay, here we are in Component Builder. You can see I've created a few components already, but let's refer back to our Figma design and let's have a go at creating this hero header within XM Cloud Component Builder. So you can see it's got a heading, a paragraph, 2 buttons, and a background image. So let's add a component. And start editing. So the first thing I know is that it's got a full width background image. So we'll select our section, which is our background, and add in a background image. Here's one I've uploaded earlier. So it's a static background image, so let's paste that in. Next, we need a block element. We use blocks as basic kind of containers for our components. Let's drag it out to take up the full set of columns and rows. Okay, and within that, let's start adding our elements. So heading 1, paragraph, and we want 2 buttons side by side. The easiest way to do that is going to be to add another block and make that a 2-column block. Now within that, let's add in button 1 and button 2. No, that's not in the right spot. Okay. You can see it adds in default text, and of course we can replace that with the actual text we want from our designs. I'll show you. Okay, and you can do that with each of the elements, such as the buttons. So let's now refine this a little bit further. One thing I can see is that the padding that's been added to the section is too big. So let's check our designs, what our padding should be. It should be 64 at the top and 72 at the side. So we can come to our section, spacing, and we can reduce that. Now, again, we can have set up our own defined set of padding and spacing, but for now, we'll just use the default. Okay, the next thing I can see is that these buttons are not quite right. We need to set a max width on these, which we can do. So select the button, dimensions and max width, 150. And this one, 150. Didn't that work? Oh, okay. And then, of course, we need some space between those. So we'll go to our block level, spacing, horizontal gap, horizontal padding, rather. Gap. Horizontal gap. Okay. That's getting close. Now, I mentioned that you can apply a theme to an entire component and it will style everything. So we can do that over here. The current theme is light. Let's change that to Cova theme and away. Next thing I can see, this is our default button style, but it's the primary button. We want to make this a secondary button style. So we can do that as well. Cova secondary. And there you have it. Obviously, the text is still not right. I'll just do this one. But for the purpose of the demonstration, I think you get the idea. Now, the exact padding and spacing is not quite right, but we can preview this, different breakpoints, and see how it looks. Not too bad out of the box. If it's not quite right, you can actually create custom versions for specific breakpoints. To do that, we just go duplicate version down here, and we can create this version just for extra small breakpoints. And in this version, we can change the copy, shrink it down, change the buttons, whatever we need. And then this version will render just for that specific breakpoint. Now, this feature doesn't appear to be working at the moment, so we're just going to delete that so we don't get confused. And here we've got the version that will apply for all different breakpoints. Okay, it's not perfect, but it's getting pretty close pretty quickly. Now, before we can add this to our pages page, we need to stage it. So let's do that. And publishing is you need to do before you can make it available on the live site. That's saving. Over here, I'll refresh our pages page. Check that saved, yep. And let's go ahead and add this component. Now you browse components by your component collections. So I'll come down here to our AC Cova collection and add it in. Okay, not looking too bad. Let's preview the page. And there we go. There's our homepage hero. It's not perfect, but of course we've got the controls available to be able to refine that further. That's our homepage hero. Okay, now let's go in and get one of our other components. I'll leave it there. Here's our item card. So again, referring to our Figma designs, we've got a primary action bar with 3 item cards here. So let's see if we can build that out. I'm going to make a copy of this. And with this component, we're going to add an external data source. I'll show you how that works. Edit. So at the moment, we've got a block, then a card, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 elements within that card. If I select the card, and if I want to make this driven by an external data source, I come down here to Data Scope, Data Collection, and Mapped, and let's select a contentful data source. So I jump over to contentful. I'll show you I've got a content model for item cards, and then 3 content items here, which correspond to the content we want to display. And we've got a title, a description, an icon, and link field, which matches the elements in our component. So let's add in this data source. Okay, that's added in, and now we need to map each of these elements to the corresponding source within the data. So the image, we need to map this to the icon. The heading, we map it to the title. Description, we map the description field. And even the link here, we're going to map to the link. And there's our data-driven component. Let's stage this back into our page, and let's add it in, see how it looks. Components. You can see it's pretty easy to drag and drop. Again, I'll preview that. Working nicely. This would be a good example where you might use a different version for mobile, and instead of having them side by side, would stack them one after each other. Now with this component, I'm going to show you a cool little feature. So we've built our component here. If I go back into the component builder, we actually have an option of sharing this component or using this component outside of XM Cloud. So to do that, we get our embedding code, which is here. And you've got different options for different types of code snippets you might want to use to embed the component. We can use our web component code here. We can populate it with data, and I'll just preview that. And hopefully it'll show our component. Here it is. And I've actually tested this and embedded this component within my WordPress blog site. And I have the link here. So this is just a WordPress blog, standard blog, and I've just pasted in that HTML, and it actually renders pretty well. Obviously there's a scroll bar there, but we could easily fix that and tighten that up. But conceptually, this is a really powerful tool to extend the component builder beyond XM Cloud. So that's how we embed our components. Now, the last thing I'm going to show with components is how to take a component we've built with a data source with lots of data in it and display that component with specific data depending on the context. So we're going to use this article card row. Again, referring to our Figma designs, we've got a news carousel here. Now this component, we've added an external data source, which is a bunch of US space news. And as you can see, there's heaps of data behind this component. When it comes to adding this component to a page, let's find the component. Here it is, and let's drag it in. Now let's say on the home page, we want to show the top 3 most recent news items. We can do that by coming over here to limit and limiting it to 3. And then when we preview that page, it's going to have the 3 most recent news items, no matter what they are. But let's say we want to add this same component to a product page and show news specific to that product. We can do that as well. We come back in here, and instead of limiting it to 3, we can specify, and we can pick the items that we want to display. So we might want this one, and this one, and then preview that. And it's going to have that specific content. Oop, what's happened there? There's 4. Oh, yeah, because I selected 4 instead of 3. Get rid of that. So that's a component with an external data source where you can display different content depending on the context. So that's our page that we've built up. I've got another page here where I've added in the other components that I built using Component Builder. Let's just preview that. Hero, cards, and then various other components here. As you can see, it works pretty well out of the box with responsiveness. It does have that version feature, which is not quite working, but will give you even more control over how it renders the different breakpoints. And you can see that I can pretty quickly build up a page that's pretty close to what we need with no code. So hopefully I've given you a good sense of what this component builder can do within XM Cloud. Hopefully I've shown off some of its features, what it can and can't do. Obviously it's a product that's continuously being improved and iterated. So watch this space. I'm sure that some of the things that don't quite work as expected will be improved over the coming weeks and months. And by all means, if you've got access to XM Cloud, jump in and start having a play. I think it's a really good tool for quickly prototyping sites, mocking pages up, and as I say, being able to share styles and components across multiple sites and potentially having your own XM Cloud starter kit that you can quickly spin up a new site within your organization within XM Cloud.